Billionaire's incredible steak dinner takes a surprising turn when a touching note is discovered. As Jake Turner stood in his penthouse, gazing out at the twinkling lights of the Chicago skyline, an unsettling emptiness gripped him. He was a self-made billionaire, yet the wealth that buoyed his status felt increasingly hollow. Raised by a single mother in a dilapidated neighborhood, he had clawed his way out, but the very glitz he had once longed for now threatened to drown him. Just hours before his extravagant steak dinner to impress high-profile investors, he stumbled on a crumpled note in his favorite cookbook, a relic of his mother's gentle hand that sent ripples of nostalgia through him. It spoke of hard work, loyalty, and the importance of staying true to oneself. It was a stark reminder of the values that once grounded him and a troubling contrast to the man he had become. As he prepared for the evening, an argument erupted in his mind. His ambitious partner, Lila, had suggested pursuing a dubious deal, one that promised immense wealth but would come at the price of compromising their family's legacy. The thought gnawed at him, and a bead of sweat trickled down his back. Was this success? A sudden wave of panic washed over him, and he realized the evening wasn't just about business, it was a reckoning. The lavish meal, adorned tables, and expensive wine felt too much like a facade, veiling the truth lurking beneath his polished surface. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The tension built as the evening unfolded. Jake could hear the murmurs of investors, the clink of fine china, but all he felt was an aching yearning for something real, something meaningful. Each laugh felt hollow, each compliment sharp against his conscience. Then in a moment of sheer impulse, he decided to invite his estranged father, a retired factory worker who had always doubted Jake's path. With one simple act, he hoped to mend a bridge long burnt, to reclaim the boy who had once dreamt amidst crumbling walls. As he made the call to his father, doubt flooded in. Would the investors understand? Would they look down upon him for being so emotionally driven? As the clock ticked toward dinner, anticipation mixed with uncertainty. Jake's heart raced with conflicting emotions. Excitement met dread in an anxious tango. He could picture his father entering the extravagant dining room, navigating the stark contrast between their worlds. The guests would soon turn from financial opportunities to this raw display of vulnerability, and he could feel the weight of their gaze. He raised his glass for a toast, but instead of praising wealth, he addressed the bonds of family, the painful sacrifice, the heavy price of success. His voice trembled as he spoke, piercing through the fabric of their materialistic gathering. Could he prioritize the love he once lost over the ambitions that had alienated him? As the words hung in the air, Jake felt a profound sense of anguish wash over him. The frailty of human relationships bore down heavily, and he wrestled with the choice before him: revoke the deal that promised everything for the sake of bridging the gap with his father. The tension was electric, the room poised at the edge of an emotional cliff while every corner echoed with unspoken promises. Jake locked eyes with his father, searching for understanding, their history swirling around them. Only time would tell if he would take the leap into redemption or retreat back to the world that had made him. The moment lingered like a charged current between father and son, as the hushed audience awaited a reaction. Jake's heart raced, caught between what he desired and what he feared. He cast a furtive glance at the investors seated around the table, their expressions a mosaic of surprise and bewilderment. What would they make of this unexpected turn? Would they still see him as a shrewd businessman or merely a sentimental fool? Tension coursed through his veins as he considered the consequences of his impulsive invitation. Lila's narrowed eyes told him she was still processing the shift in their carefully crafted evening, a radical departure from the show of wealth they had planned. Jake's resolve wavered slightly, but the sight of his father, a man constructed from years of hard labor and sacrifice, bolstered his conviction. He had spent years trying to erase the past, yet here it was, urging him to confront the ghosts he had buried under layers of success. "You're a good man, son," came his father's voice, steady and filled with a warmth that reached through the icy ambience of the room. Jake could see the pride and hurt etched on his father's face, a reflection of the unspoken understanding forged through shared struggles. A weight lifted slightly, even as whispers echoed among the guests. They had seen the man who had become a titan, and now they were witnessing the son who still sought validation. With a deep breath, Jake leaned into this moment of vulnerability. His voice rang out, softer now but steady. "I've spent years building an empire, but at what cost? I've neglected the people who mattered most." Each word felt like a brick being laid on a path back to his roots. "My mother taught me the value of hard work, but she also instilled the importance of connection. I've lost sight of that, chasing shadows." Lila, caught between frustration and admiration, shifted in her seat. He could sense her tension, could feel the rift widening as their goals increasingly diverged. Yet, for the first time in a long while, his priority was clear. His father deserved this acknowledgement, and he needed to reclaim the essence of who he truly was beyond the titles and balances. As the conversation flowed, Jake made an unexpected revelation. "I'm walking away from the deal," he announced, the words tumbling forth without hesitation. Gasps reverberated throughout the room. "It doesn't align with the legacy I want to build. We'll find another way." Each syllable stitched together a feeble thread of his former self, one that had been marred by greed and ambition. Jake felt alive in a way he hadn't for years, fueled by the thrill of making a choice that wasn't tethered to monetary gain. A silence fell over the crowd, yet all he cared about was the knowing nod from his father, the silent agreement that perhaps they could begin rebuilding. The image of his mother's handwriting danced through his mind, a gentle reminder that life was not measured in profits but in moments of authenticity. He realized now that every choice would partake in a larger narrative, their narrative, signifying growth rather than mere survival. "Why now?" Lila's voice cut through the air, questioning but tinged with deeper concern. "We could have had it all, Jake. You're throwing it away." "Am I?" he countered, fully turning towards her. "What is it all if it means forsaking who we are?" The confrontation simmered, escalating, but he welcomed the tension. The utterance of his new truth rippled through the room, a transformation from ambition to introspection. With every moment that passed, Jake felt a new sense of direction emerge. The room had shifted from an arena of power plays into a space for genuine dialogue, fragile yet grounded in sincerity. But as the evening drew to a close, Jake knew this was just the beginning. He still faced a myriad of questions about his partnership with Lila, and what direction his business would take without the crutch of corruption. He gazed around the table, remorseful yet hopeful, understanding that navigating this newfound territory would demand much from him. There would be no easy resolutions, but he was prepared for the battle that lay ahead. As dinner plates were cleared and conversations resumed, the weight of clarity pressed down on him. What lay beyond this moment? What alliances would fracture, and which would strengthen? It was time to sift through the ruins he had built up and determine what he wanted from his life, and who he truly intended to become. A new journey awaited, littered with challenges, but Jake felt ready to embrace it, even if it meant facing down the demons he had cultivated in his pursuit of wealth. But with every choice, there was a ripple, and truth awaited him in the shadows, a darkness he couldn't ignore. Would he be able to face the haunting choices of his past that still held him captive, or would they take hold once more? The silence hung awkwardly in the air as the evening light faded into a sterile hue of uncertainty. Jake's ears buzzed with the aftermath of his pronouncement. Walking away from the deal had been liberating, but now shadows of doubt crept back in. What had he really accomplished? Was this shift in vision enough to rekindle the connection he'd yearned for with his father? The path he had chosen was still fraught with peril, yet an ember of determination sparked deep within. His father's quiet pride felt like an old coat, worn, familiar, but slightly uncomfortable to wear after years of distance. Jake could almost hear his mother's laughter, a haunting melody of encouragement and unreachable expectations. He thought of the handwritten notes she left him throughout his childhood, always urging him to strive for something meaningful, something greater than mere profitability. Suddenly, those sentiments clashed with the cold realities of adulthood. "Imagine the future we could build together," Lila said, her voice a mix of frustration and confusion, desperately reaching for clarity in the tumultuous waters they found themselves in. Her eyes locked onto his, a challenge disguised as a plea. "You were so focused on this, Jake. Think of the possibilities." But Jake was fighting a greater battle within. While the ambition that had propelled him to success continued to whisper sweet nothings in his ear, the raw truth echoed louder. Outsmarting competitors was instinctual. Now, stepping back required a depth of self-awareness he had never needed before. "I thought I was building an empire," he murmured, half to himself. "But I didn't realize I was constructing a cage." He left the table, pacing deliberately, as if physically grounding himself against the weight of his revelations. The investors watched him with vested interests that were worlds apart from the heartfelt truths he was grappling with. Their expectations were narrow, yet Jake's vision was wide. He wanted more than just triumph, he sought fulfillment and deeper connections. As he contemplated the future, fragments of his past emerged like jagged shards that had once been the foundation of his success. The image of his younger self, ambitious yet naive, echoed in his mind. He recalled the yearning for approval, the desperate need for validation that had driven him to make countless questionable choices. Unfortunately, the uncertainties of abandoning a lucrative deal were entangled with the newfound desire to reclaim his identity. With mounting anxiety, he couldn't help but question Lila's loyalty to their corporation. Was she committed to a partnership built on authenticity, or was this a mere strategic pivot, void of the emotional connectivity he now craved? Her aspirations clashed with his, and the line separating ambition from greed had long since blurred. "Jake," she called, stepping closer, almost breaking through his introspection. "We need to find a middle ground. You can't just throw it all away on some sentimental journey. We're doing this for a reason." But he caught the undertones of trepidation in her voice. Her concern was twofold: a partnership on the brink of rupture and a deeply personal fear of losing him to a nostalgic past that threatened their future successes. "I never sacrificed my integrity to succeed," he said firmly, yet his voice wavered. "But if being a part of something less than genuine is the price I have to pay, then I don't want that future." Lila's eyes softened, the facade cracking as she searched for a way to reconcile their diverging paths. Every glance was laden with a question: could they indeed build something authentic together, given how differently they viewed hope and prosperity? "How do you plan to achieve this new vision?" Lila asked, tentatively but with a glimmer of curiosity. The inquiry snapped him to attention. He had thought about the importance of connection, the lessons from his family, but execution was the crucible in which his new resolve would be tested. Ideas flowed beneath the surface, but they needed clarity. "I need to reconnect with my values," he declared, resolve blooming in his chest. "This isn't just a dream, it needs to materialize into action step by step, decision by decision. I want mentorship programs, community involvement. The public perception must change." Lila stilled, measuring his conviction, ignited by the curiosity that flickered in her eyes. "And how do you plan to tackle the board? The investors? They won't sit idle." "I don't know yet, but this path requires transparency. I won't brush things under the rug anymore," he answered, a new fire igniting in him. "If I'm to face the shadows of my choices, I must also confront those who have previously held sway over my decisions." Jake could feel the tension tightening, but clarity of purpose shielded him from paralyzing doubt. What lay ahead would demand courage, vision, and action. He couldn't plan for every possibility, but he could begin to navigate the uncharted waters of authenticity, yet, a lingering apprehension throbbed deep inside. The ghosts of past decisions were not easily exorcised. Could he withstand the scrutiny that would inevitably come? Would the ghosts he suppressed rise to challenge him when he least expected it? Just then, a buzz from his phone diverted attention back to reality. A notification flashed up, and his heart skipped. An email from one of the investors he thought was aligned with him, a direct request for clarity on their future trajectory. The chilling potential of betrayal loomed close. Gripping the phone tightly, Jake prepared himself for the harsh reality of navigating old dynamics while charting a new course. With the shadows of his past looming, he could sense a confrontation nearing, one that would hold the keys to both his salvation and downfall. Would he be prepared when the moment arrived? Jake took a deep breath as he swiped the notification open. The email displayed a pending query from one of the more influential investors, a man notorious for wrapping his interests in veiled threats disguised as polite inquiries. It was a reminder that the comfortable facade he had built was not impervious. The message felt weighted, each word charged with the expectations and pressures he was trying to escape. "We seek clarity on our future trajectory," he read aloud quietly, the irritation bubbling up with every syllable. "They won't accept vagueness, they want details." The truth smacked him anew. This was an exploitative game where sincerity often took a backseat to profit margin. "Are you going to respond?" Lila asked, her foot tapping nervously, as if bracing herself for a powerful storm. Jake felt a part of him tighten. His instinct to prioritize transparency clashed with the reality of navigating these treacherous waters. "I have to, they expect a professional response. But I refuse to pander to their demands." The tension in his shoulders mirrored a shift within him. It was more than a simple business exchange, it was a confrontation with the person he had been and the one he aspired to be. He was tired of deciding based on fear and manipulation. His former self had thrived on it. To reclaim his position in this narrative, he would need to turn that fear into actionable insights. "I'll craft something that conveys honesty," he decided aloud, his voice gaining strength. "But more than that, I'll lay down my ambitions for what they truly are, a means to reconnect with our values no matter the fallout." Lila nodded, caught in his newfound clarity, but uncertainty still flickered in her eyes. "But you know they won't take well to any suggestion of a shift in direction. They're in it for gains, not sentiment." The weight of her words hung in the air. In that moment, Jake was acutely aware of the implications. He had skirted the edges of that truth for so long, using his ambition to cloak his vulnerability. Now, facing the depths of his intentions offered him a new clarity, yet it also left him oddly exposed. "I understand that," he admitted, raking a hand through his hair. "But at their core, businesses are built on relationships, not just numbers. I need to share my vision about inclusive practices and meaningful engagement. It's time I prove that there is another way to success, because I can't keep dragging with the guise of ambition alone." Yet even as he spoke, a dull ache of anxiety gripped him. What if his restructuring efforts turned the financial tide against him? What if his colleagues viewed his new vision as a weakness? The specter of past judgments clouded the air, filling him with doubt. A rush of clarity surged within him. Perhaps it was a burst of bravery or simply the rebellion of a man who had suffered enough. "I'll draft an email that starts a conversation about redefining our identities. It's time to show them my commitment to a deeper engagement, not just numbers on a balance sheet. If they balk, then that's a reflection of them, not me." He keyed in the email a balanced summary of his priorities mixed with a heartfelt appeal for reform. As words flowed from his fingertips, a new energy coursed through him. He was crafting a narrative that stretched beyond profitability, creating space for what he considered genuine growth. Once he hit send, dread settled in. Was he being reckless? Would they read it as weakness rather than ambition? Questions flooded in like water over a dam, but something flickered in its wake, a fierce spark of rebellion against self-imposed limitations. Done, he finally exhaled, glancing at Lila, who looked both hopeful and anxious. "Do you really think they'll listen?" she asked, uncertainty tinged with an evident longing for belief in his vision. The weight of her question resonated deeply, appraisingly. Even as he projected an air of confidence, he recognized the ever-looming potential for backlash. "I don't know," he replied, shaking his head. "Maybe this will backfire spectacularly, but I have to believe. That authenticity has the power to connect. If they truly care about growth, they'll see it." Moments later, the unmistakable ping of a response interrupted his thoughts. "Wow, that was quick," Lila murmured, her eyes widening. Jake felt his heart take a sudden leap, each beat echoing under the pressure of uncertainty. He hesitated before opening it, knowing full well that whatever lay within held the potential to either embolden his resolve or shatter it completely. With reluctant trepidation, he glanced at the screen as the words materialized before him. The stakes had never felt higher, nor had the toll of his choices weighed so heavily. The time had come to face the consequences of his decision. Would they lead him to triumph or expose him to the vulnerabilities he had fought so hard to overcome? Jake's heartbeat quickened as he stared at the screen, the words blurring momentarily before his eyes. With a fading breath, he summoned the courage to read. The response was short, almost terse, yet it brimmed with implications he hadn't anticipated. "Jake, thank you for your prompt reply. However, I urge you to focus on actionable outcomes. Investors need clear data-driven results, not ideological shifts. Let's schedule a meeting to discuss our future." The message wrapped around him like a cold vice. No acknowledgement of his vision, no openness to dialogue, just an unyielding insistence on profitability. "I knew it," he muttered, disappointment surfacing like crushed glass. He felt Lila's gaze land on him, her expression a mix of sympathy and acknowledgement. "They don't care about values, they only want the numbers." "Jake, you can use this," she suggested, her voice taking on a steadiness he was still struggling to find. "It's a chance to refine your pitch. Show them how your vision can translate into profitable outcomes." Could she see the way his confidence began to splinter? "This isn't about them bending to my vision, Lila. This is about a fundamental clash of priorities. I was trying to connect with them on a level they value, right, but it doesn't mean you have to give up," she interrupted, a spark igniting in her eyes. "Think about it. If you frame it correctly, you could still gain traction. They need to understand that true profitability comes through genuine engagement, not just spreadsheets." Could he shift their perspective, find a bridge between his ideals and their demands? The thought festered within him, tasting like desperation. He had bared his soul. What was left could only seem like a half measure, a compromise that would carry the taint of his prior evasiveness. Lila shifted, undeterred by his hesitance. "You've got what it takes, Jake. You're not just selling a plan, you're selling a purpose. That's worth fighting for. You need to shape your next response not as an explanation of values, but as a proposal that intricately interlaces your vision with their expectations." "Their expectations," he mumbled, lost in the possibility of recalibrating his message. Was it feasible? Could he still articulate his need for authentic connections while yielding enough substance to appease their financial cravings? The conflict churned within him. "I could outline a business model," he murmured, his mind racing through potential solutions. "Connect engagement to metrics they understand, prove that ethical practices can drive profit." "It's an angle." "Exactly." Lila nodded, her eyes shining with the light of his prospective determination. "But you need to own the initiative fully. Don't let them dictate your value, acknowledge their metrics while emphasizing yours. Show them that your approach isn't just idealistic fluff, it's calculus. Every action has a projected outcome." I'll draft a new response," Jake said, already typing furiously, stripping away the weight of his earlier email while layering it with specifics about engagement strategies tied to profitability. As he composed the email, his fingers became vehicles of defiance. Here was an opportunity for synthesis, a way to marry his mission to their demands. This wasn't just about survival, it was about assertion, about framing the conversation on his terms. The anxiety began to dissolve, replaced by determination. As he finished writing, he sensed a pivotal shift inside him. Each word became a stone propelling him forward, evidence that vulnerability could transform into strength, that conviction could be more than hollow proclamations. He was actively reshaping not just the communication but his own identity within that space. "Okay, I'm ready," he said, lifting his gaze to meet Lila's. "This time, I won't just present an idea, I'll propose solutions that can generate fiscal results." Just as he prepared to send the email, another notification pinged. Before Lila could speak, Jake's stomach dropped as he glanced at the name flashing across the screen, a contact he hadn't expected to hear from at this point. "Sam," he whispered, recognizing the former mentor who had shaped much of his professional journey. The implications of this sudden outreach tugged at him, surfacing memories along with a painful truth. Could this be the reckoning he had been avoiding? His heart raced anew. This message could either reinforce his path forward or present an even larger obstacle looming over his ambitions. The resolution to confront those vulnerabilities had given birth to new questions. Jake took a deep breath, reminding himself that he welcomed the challenge. One door had barely closed when another opened, presenting yet another avenue he must navigate. And with each decision inches closer toward his truth, the stakes had never felt more consequential. What awaited him within the depths of this dialogue? The notification from Sam lingered on the screen, the words almost mocking him with their presence. Jake's instincts screamed at him to ignore it, to dive headfirst into crafting a new email that could save his professional life. Yet something rooted him to the spot, a blend of curiosity and apprehension. What could Sam possibly want after all this time? Even as he dismissed the apprehension, his mind raced back to their last meeting. Sam had been a staunch advocate for conventional routes, prioritizing safety and predictability over innovation. Today, Jake wasn't that same uncertain young professional leaning on Sam's advice. He had his own vision, flawed or not, and perhaps this was the teachable moment he needed to reshape his narrative. "Are you going to reply?" Lila asked, her voice breaking into his thoughts, a gentle nudge toward action. "I need to see what he says first," Jake replied, cautious but intrigued. He opened the message, reading through Sam's words carefully. "Jake, it's been a while. I've heard about your recent endeavors and I'd like to talk. I can offer insights from my latest project, a rapidly scaling venture. Let us meet up." What Sam deemed insights felt like a veiled warning. Could he risk stepping back into that sphere of influence without losing his newfound resolve? Sam had been a voice of reason in a tumultuous sea of ideas, but reason sometimes shackled potential. The tension within him surged. Perhaps Sam represented the inevitable push-pull of traditional methods against innovative spirit. "Jake?" Lila urged again, sensing the tumult boiling beneath the surface. This could be a great opportunity. Jake shifted his focus back to the task at hand. "Yeah, I know. But I need to juggle what he might offer with what I'm building. I can't afford to lose sight of my path." The remnants of self-doubt began creeping into his psyche as he contemplated the meeting. He had spent too many years trying to fit into molds that left no room for creativity. Was he ready to navigate the complexities of Sam's world without losing touch with his own? He sensed a familiar anxiety rising within him, that gnawing doubt that came with each decision that felt pivotal. Instead of retreating, he leaned on the sense of growth sparked from his earlier email exchange. "This isn't about abandoning my vision," he uttered, confidence returning to his voice. "It's about strengthening it." He turned back towards the screen. A quick reply to Sam was necessary, but it had to reflect his growth. "I'm open to discussion, but I'm also pursuing my own projects that demand attention," he quickly typed out, feeling somewhat liberated as he hit send. "Good move, Jake," Lila encouraged, her eyes twinkling with admiration. "You've got to be clear about what you want, you can't let anyone else dictate your journey." With every decision made, Jake felt walls within him starting to crumble. The resolve formed through Lila's earlier support, his own drafting, and now this correspondence with Sam painted a different picture, not just of a young man seeking approval, but of someone aware of his unique strengths. Jake glanced up at Lila, a flicker of eagerness welling in his chest. "I think we can actually present our insights better than I thought," he said, eyes alight with ambition. "It could enhance my pitch on collaboration as well, to merge some of Sam's insights without losing my essence." "Exactly." Lila beamed, recognizing the potential in his voice. "That's the spirit. Own that discourse, shape it as you see fit." Their shared excitement ignited a fire within him. He had always fought against the grain, but sometimes merging paths didn't mean sacrificing authenticity. With renewed vigor, he dove into the logistics and metrics he could leverage, thinking of ways to integrate Sam's potential insights into his overarching vision. Jake's thoughts shifted again, toward the upcoming meeting with potential investors. This was a critical moment. He needed to own his value and maintain clarity of purpose. And as he mapped out the coming days, the reality started to solidify. Every interaction, every discussion, was a chance to stake his claim in this challenging arena. But lurking beneath his enthusiasm was the unseen gravity of Sam's influence, threatening to impose doubt at any turn. Just as he stepped confidently into this momentum, the next challenge emerged. The text notifications blinked insistently, and his heart raced once more. Another investor was reaching out, and this time the implications promised to escalate the tension even further. Could he balance these interactions and still stay true to his vision? Jake's phone buzzed again, pulling him from his thoughts of investors into an undeniable sense of urgency. He dismissed the message quickly, but the sensation lingered. The weight of what he was cultivating nudged him into action. This next meeting felt pivotal not just for business, but for his identity within the landscape he was trying to build. The investor's profile was impressive. A seasoned entrepreneur with a history of recognizing and funding game-changing ventures, Karen Morgan was known for seeking out the next big idea. Jake had studied her from afar and could hardly ignore the growing thrill and anxiety settling in his core as he considered how their interaction could shape his future. "Do you know what you're going to say?" Lila asked, her brow furrowed with concern yet defiant hope. "Yeah, I have a framework," he replied, though a thread of uncertainty still lingered. "I'm emphasizing the originality of my vision and the market fit, especially how it diverges from the old norms." It was more than a pitch, it was his assertion, his declaration of independence from expecting validation. "Don't forget to highlight how integrity drives your approach." That'll resonate with her. Lila's guidance steadied him, reminding him once again of the principle that mattered most. Every time he articulated his values, he felt a piece of self-doubt dissolve. In these brief moments of self-reflection, he recognized how Lila had become a mirror, reflecting his growth back at him. She wasn't merely supporting him, she was also grounding him, making sure he didn't lose sight of who he was while trying to innovate. As they entered the designated cafe for their meeting, the bustling atmosphere was charged with possibilities and distractions. Jake inhaled deeply, noting how the rich smell of coffee intermingled with an electric aura of ambition. It was in this environment that he needed to stand firm, not just as another entrepreneur hungry for funding, but as a visionary who had something substantive to contribute. Karen arrived shortly after, her sharp gaze scanning the room before landing on Jake. They exchanged pleasantries, and with each word, he could feel the tension building. How could he communicate his excitement without it spiraling into desperation? As he navigated through the conversation, he found himself wrestling with shadows of past insecurities. Would he lean too heavily on emotional appeal or risk being overly analytical? But just as doubt started to creep back in, he recalled Lila's insistence on authenticity. He had built a foundation on being true to his vision. Now was not the time to falter. "Karen," he began, his voice steady despite the compass of emotions swirling inside him, "I believe that innovation doesn't have to be risky to be revolutionary. In fact, it can find strength in authenticity. I want to show you not just what I'm creating, but why and how it differs. I see opportunity and responsibility as interconnected, and this venture embodies that." Jake watched as Karen's demeanor shifted slightly at his words. There was hope in her expression, an openness to the ideas he was proposing, and an understanding that they had potential beyond mere profit. As they delved deeper into discussion, he embraced the fluidity of the conversation, all the while reminding himself that he wasn't just a passive player. He was molding the dialogue to reflect his ambitions. But just as momentum built, the topic veered toward the trade-offs of creative ventures versus established models, triggering an old instinct in him to defend his choices. Jake felt a sudden chill race through him. Was this the moment where Sam's influence reared its head once more, demanding compliance? No. He shook the thought, feeling the familiar weight settle on his shoulders. He had come this far by committing to his path, and he wasn't about to backtrack. While traditional routes offer safety, they often overlook potential and uniqueness. He pushed back, driven by a newfound confidence to challenge the status quo. The room seemed to pulse with the camera of their conversation. Just as he had begun to feel anchored, his phone buzzed again, but this time it felt monumental. An unexpected message appeared a block from Sam, cutting through the resonance of his current discussion with an unsettling urgency. He glanced down, his breath hitching. What did it say? Could it be a support or a reminder of the past? Would these two spheres within his life collide in a way he hadn't anticipated? As he hovered over the screen, he knew his next move could redefine everything. The meeting teetered on a precipice, and Jake's instincts screamed for him to maintain the fragile equilibrium of the moment. His thumb hovered over the screen, torn between the gravitational pull of past loyalties and the vibrant horizon of his aspirations. The message was a distraction, a siren song tied to an identity he was striving to transcend. Jake? Karen's voice cut through the tension like a knife, jolting him back into the present. Are you with me? Yeah, just, he stammered, forcing a smile as if it could shield him from his swirling thoughts. I'm here. Let us keep moving forward. He pushed his phone into his pocket, trying to compartmentalize the anxiety that clawed at him. This was his moment, and every fiber of his being urged him to seize it. Let's talk more about the market fit, Karen suggested, leaning forward, her brow furrowed in genuine interest. What sets you apart from the competition? Jake inhaled, grounding himself as he recalled the clarity he felt mere moments ago. What differentiates my company is not just the product, it's the story we weave around it. We're building a narrative of transparency where the consumer feels an integral part of the journey. As he spoke, conviction replaced the lingering shadows of doubt. Karen nodded, her attentiveness encouraging his confidence. This was not just a pitch, it was a manifesto, a declaration of who he was becoming, but self-assurance collided brutally with a moment of vulnerability. The specter of Sam loomed large in his mind, rebuking his vision with familiar barbs of criticism. Are you sure this narrative is compelling enough? Sam's voice echoed uninvited. You're risking too much for something untested. But Jake drew strength from the clarity of his purpose. He had built this vision with care, and it would stand on its own merit. Risk isn't just about uncertainty, he replied, almost reflexively, as the question formed. It's also an invitation to innovate and inspire. Karen leaned back, her scrutiny sharpening as if weighing his integrity. That's a bold stance. Are you ready to back it up with results? Absolutely, he asserted, feeling the surge of adrenaline. I believe in building a community around shared values, a commitment not only to our clients but to the impact we create. As he articulated his purpose, the initial tension that had anchored him began to dissipate, replaced by a growing sense of ownership over his narrative. Each word became a brick in the foundation of a new identity. Yet, the tension about Sam lingered, an echo of doubt waiting for the perfect moment to resurface. Okay, Jake. Let us hear a bit more about your execution strategy. How will you implement this vision in a way that distinguishes it within the saturated marketplace? Karen pressed, eyes gleaming with the challenge. Deep breaths came in waves. Our approach will begin with targeted outreach and advocacy, leveraging platforms where our audience already engages. By enlisting early adopters as brand ambassadors, we'll foster organic growth through genuine relationships rather than paid promotion. Jake felt the words flow, a sense of rhythm emerging as if he were finally finding his voice, the one that had been buried under layers of self-doubt. However, just as he felt the conversation coalesce into something promising, another buzz broke the fragile momentum. His heart raced when he noticed it was Sam again. What was so urgent this time? There was no escaping the truth that loomed large in his mind. Every moment spent being tethered to the past felt dangerously constrictive. Jake? Karen's voice pulled him back, her patience wearing thin. Are you present? The walls felt like they were closing in. The weight of unspoken truths loomed before him, begging for exploration. Could he truly turn the page, rejecting the chains of expectation anchored in his past? "Let us address something," he said, steeling himself. "Let us consider the true cost of conformity in innovation." In that moment, he knew the next step would be defining not just his business trajectory but also the pathways to his own liberation. Would he be brave enough to confront Sam's shadow, or would it cast doubt over everything he had just rebuilt? The air thickened with that realization, propelling the conversation into a realm where he might finally confront both the past and present. As Karen raised her brow, curiosity piqued, he felt the stakes of the moment crystallize. What would he reveal next? Jake's pulse quickened, a mixture of determination and trepidation coursing through him. With the walls of the conference room pressing inward, he recognized a pivotal moment unfurling before him. This was not just a sales pitch but a chance to assert his emerging identity against the backdrop of skepticism, a chance to redefine himself. "Karen, I think it's essential for us to rethink the conversation," he began, his voice steadier than he felt inside. "Too often, businesses fall into the trap of conformity, valuing predictability over innovation. We need to challenge that." Her eyes narrowed, clearly intrigued but also probing. "And how do you plan to do that? It sounds good on paper, but how will it operate in reality?" "That's the crux," he replied, feeling the words tumble out with a mix of fervor and clarity. "We need to embrace the discomfort of being different. The goal isn't to replicate what's been done before but to break new ground, even if it means risking failure." Jake gestured toward the window, as if the skyline could reflect his ambitions. "Imagine a product launch that doesn't just focus on the product but involves the consumers in its development. We can create a platform where feedback is not just welcomed but integral to the product evolution." Karen considered this, her brow unfurling slightly. "So, you would take on the additional risk of involving your consumers in the process? That's a bold strategy for a startup." "Yes, but it's also an opportunity," he pressed on, feeling the weight behind his argument. "To foster loyalty and build a community that's invested in our brand. It won't just be about numbers, it will be about trust." For a moment, silence enveloped the room. Jake dared to hope he was making progress, but the underlying anxiety, Sam's unwavering presence in his thoughts, began to creep back. Did he really believe in what he was proposing? Or was this merely an elaborate performance to escape the past? "Jake," Karen leaned forward, piercing through his contemplation, "you're speaking about a cultural shift. It requires not just an idea but a commitment from every level of your organization. Are you prepared to lead that?" The question struck him like a lightning bolt. Leadership had rarely felt attainable. Part of him still thought of himself as the cautious follower, hesitant to ruffle feathers. Yet here, standing at the edge of his possibility, he felt a new readiness rising up in him, a whisper of the leader he might become. "Yes," he responded, his voice weighted with newfound resolution. "I am ready to take that leap. I can't afford to look back anymore. I have to lead this with authenticity and courage." Karen's expression softened, and for the first time, she nodded with understanding. "Then perhaps it's time to show yourself what that leadership looks like." Jake's heart beat louder as he realized the implication. This was not just a chance to prove himself to Karen or his investors, it was a critical step toward confronting Sam's shadow. He would be crafting a narrative steeped in honest resilience, one that didn't shy away from uncertainty but instead embraced it. As the meeting drew to a close, the tension between anticipation and apprehension tangled together in his mind. He felt a gradual erosion of doubt. Whatever challenges lay ahead, he could face them armed with the authenticity he was beginning to cultivate. The moment of truth awaited him, and it was not just in the professional realm. It was a call to confront his personal history and forge ahead, leaving the shadows behind. Could he truly shatter the hold of his past, or would he falter at the threshold of his commitment? As he looked at Karen, ready to take the next step, he felt the weight of the looming decision pressing down once more. Would he be brave enough to not only advocate for innovation but also to embody the leader he was meant to be? The air crackled, tension electrifying his resolve as the next chapter of his journey beckoned. What awaited him would shape his path and determine whether he truly had shed the constraints of his past. In the days following the transformative dinner, Jake Turner found himself standing on the threshold of a new chapter in his life. The decision to walk away from the lucrative deal had ignited a passion, a fire rooted in authenticity that eclipsed mere ambition. No longer did the Chicago skyline represent just wealth, it now signified freedom, a beacon guiding him toward reconciled relationships and renewed purpose. Jake faced days filled with challenges, yet the clarity he had gained propelled him forward, fueling his commitment to develop a business steeped in integrity and community engagement. He began reaching out to potential partners who valued ethical practices over transactional relationships, crafting a network of like-minded individuals who recognized the tangible results that could arise from genuine connections. His vision began to take form. Empowered by the teachings of his mother, her notes whispering reminders of hard work and loyalty, Jake leaned into the discomfort of innovation. He established mentorship programs designed to foster local talent, demonstrating that success was not simply a product of personal gain but of shared growth. Each decision reflected growth beyond profits. It solidified his role not just as a businessman, but as a leader who embodied the principles he once lost sight of. Word spread, and soon he found himself at a pivotal meeting with an influential nonprofit organization interested in his vision. As he prepared for the presentation, the confidence he had strived to cultivate bubbled within him. It was time to share his blueprint for merging ethical responsibility with financial returns. He laid out a comprehensive strategy that would not only enhance profitability but also redefine brand loyalty through community engagement. On the day of the meeting, Jake walked into the conference room, a renewed sense of purpose guiding his steps. His earlier encounters with investors paled in comparison to this one. He was no longer the uncertain man seeking validation. He was clear, concise, and compelling. Today, I want to discuss how we can bridge the gap between profitable business models and authentic community involvement, he began, his voice steady, resonating with conviction. Our success lies in collaboration not just with clients, but with the community. When businesses invest in their people, they cultivate loyalty that translates into sustainable growth. He detailed the mentorship programs, showcasing how measurable impacts would spotlight their shared success. For the first time, he saw the skeptical expressions soften into curiosity. He felt the energy shift in the room as conversations morphed from numbers to narratives of change and influence. As questions arose about implementation, Jake answered confidently, articulating a roadmap filled with checkpoints that demonstrated both ethical integrity and accountability. Each term was imbued with the values he held paramount. With every successive response, he observed a newfound respect blossom among stakeholders. His vision had taken root, and they recognized it as pragmatic. Days turned into weeks, and Jake's transformation garnered recognition. At a vibrant conference of innovators, he received accolades not solely for financial success, but for his commitment to nurturing sustainable practices, an achievement that filled him with pride. He was invited to speak on panels sharing his journey, how confronting his values had unlocked potential beyond what he had previously perceived, yet, it would be his relationship with his father that emerged most strengthened from this journey. Vulnerable conversations replaced years of silence. They shared meals, reminisced about sacrifices made, and forged genuine warmth found in laughter. Just as Jake presented a new narrative within the business landscape, he redefined his personal story, one of reconciliation and familial bonds. As he stood in front of a packed audience one evening, Jake shared his journey, the culmination of walking away from financial gain in pursuit of integrity. He articulated his growth, his commitment to fostering relationships over mere transactions, and how those values reshaped his identity. The crowd erupted into applause, and for the first time in years, he felt not the weight of expectations but the lightness of freedom. He had built solid confidence rooted in authenticity, embraced the complexity of navigating business through integrity, and realized that personal fulfillment lay not in abundance but in connection. At that moment, as the lights dimmed and the audience's cheers echoed in his ears, Jake Turner had conquered his inner turmoil. He proved to himself that success is not a solitary journey, but a collective venture rooted in trust, respect, and understanding. He had reclaimed his essence, and now, this is the moment to take action. You need to subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that challenge and inspire. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show your support. Comment your reactions and theories about Jake's incredible journey. And share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformative conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to support and amplify these narratives of personal overcoming.